Are Saurus Warriors and Saurus Spears any good in patch 5.1? It's time to take a good look at these Saurus Warriors and Spears. Now, for a little while, they stopped going into Rampage mid-battle. This automatically makes them better. Having gone through a few incarnations with the building layout, they now constitute your Tier 2 and Tier 3 building options for hardy infantry in the faction. Are they good? Let's look at the details. Recruited for 750 gold and 188 upkeep default, the basic Saurus Warriors come in at 100 entities on ultra unit size with 10,200 health between them for 102 per entity. For quick comparison, a Skink cohort is 160 entities, 8,000 unit health, and 50 hit points per entity, and Empire Swordsmen are 120 entities, 8,280 health, and 69 health per entity. Armor is 60, which has always been a middle ground between light and heavy armor. Leadership here is 75, which is pretty high for what is nowadays a Tier 2 shieldless infantry unit. Speed is 31, which is slow for the roster, but not slow compared to Chaos Warriors. Charge speed is 38. Melee attack begins at 29, with an attack interval of 3.7, so less downtime between attack animations than some. There is no splash damage here. Let's keep that in mind. Melee defense starts at 28, and that's by no means horrible, but it's also not great for frontline infantry. Weapon strength is given as 52, split between 34 base and 18 armor piercing. This value, on the other hand, is flat out phenomenal, vastly outstripping the 21 base and 7 armor piercing we could expect from Empire Swordsmen. Even though this is not an armor piercing unit per se, attacks that connect will really pile up damage even against the worst opponents. Of course, that's the rub. Will the attacks connect? Charge bonus is 16 and mass is 190. But let's keep in mind again that there are only 100 entities, and for so-called small targets, they're taking up more space than the models of their peers. They are more difficult to charge through entity for entity, yes, but there are physical limitations on how many can fight at one time. Saurus Warriors can hide in forest, have Predatory Fighter, which grants a short-term buff when opponents nearby are fleeing, and Primal Instincts, granting bonuses in combat when the unit's total hit points are reduced to 50% or lower. These Lizardman units still sniff out stock far in excess of normal units, just in case that's not said as explicitly as before. Now let's look at Saurus Spears briefly. Same price, same health, same leadership, 24 melee attack, 4.1 attack interval, but Spears take less time to attack, 32 melee defense, weapon strength 42, split between base 29 and armor piercing 13. Not exactly terrible numbers compared to most factions, with a bonus versus large of 60. This means weapon strength is effectively 58 against large targets, with a base melee attack 40 against them. Charge bonus is 10, and mass is 190 again. Unlike the Warriors, the Spears do have charge defense versus large, and charge reflection, doing double damage to a charging unit as long as the charge bonus holds up, but that's if braced. So you can see why some people bring the argument that you should never recruit Saurus Spears because they're clearly inferior in offensive clout versus infantry, and their adjusted weapon strength against cavalry is barely more than Saurus Warriors. This is true, but a whole 11 extra melee attack against large targets means a much better chance of hitting consistently. Besides, you don't always want to take the charge without any ability to stop it. Chariots are going to eat you for lunch if you have no counters at all. Let's continue to the shielded variants recruited from the Tier 3 building. Now we get the units for 800 gold and an even 200 upkeep. You get a 35% missile parry chance from the frontal arc. Everything else, the same except melee defense, rises to 34. With the Saurus Spears, it's a similar story with melee defense rising to 38 base. 38 is especially respectable. In the redline skills, Proud Warrior grants a maximum of +6 melee attack and +6 armor at 3 pits. It is important to note that you get melee attack +4 for the first pip, so if you're using them at all, it is well worth your effort to at least take that one pip. Rank 7 Saurus Warriors and Spears benefit from Jungle Dominion, granting +10 armor, so armor 76 if fully geared. Weapon strength +12%, which matters because they start with a lot, and spell resistance 15% because 10,000 hit point units get spellbombed, and this helps soften the blow. In the tech tree, there's an entire dedicated line to the Saurus. Besides a little recruit rank and recruitment cost help, Tablet of the Saurus provides +5 melee defense, Sequence of Weapon Crafting provides +10% weapon strength for all Saurus units, and Kroq-Gar now begins his campaign with both of these techs unlocked, with a tier 2 recruitment building and the line unlocked itself, meaning he can immediately research Sequence of Mass Combat from turn 1 for +5 melee attack for Saurus units. Saurus Invigoration gives -10% upkeep faction-wide. Armor Crafting grants +5 armor and missile resistance 10% for Saurus as well as Temple Guard. The remaining techs apply to Temple Guard only, they don't count here. So, with all that said, how do you use Saurus warriors and spears? I've alluded to it briefly, but Saurus units take up a lot of space. In spite of the individual power and ferocity of the Saurus warrior, he can't fight 3 Skaven at... well, actually he can, but it's going to be a slow process if he has to kill them one by one. He'll stand tall against Storm Vermin a lot better than any Skink cohort Legionnaire. It's just to say, even if your Saurus are doing high damage over the course of a battle, dishing out 10,000 damage and more and getting 150 kills as a unit, that damage does not come quickly, purely because of the frontage limitations. On the other hand, a combination of armor, at least against troops their own tier, their decent and better melee defense, and the high general health of the unit means these are really hard for the enemy to kill. Short of Tzeentch and Tamarkan mass bombardment army abilities, and believe me, those hurt, it's kind of hard to kill significant numbers of Saurus in gobs. Non-spears can get bullied by chariots, artillery is something you can try to abuse against Saurus, and I know in choke point battles in Warhammer 2 I used Marathi to rain Purple Death on these blobs, but still, broadly speaking and considering their cost, Saurus are hard to kill. So in practice, Saurus clog up the works. They deny your enemy room to roam, though they also get in your way in some fashion as well. They'll fight, and frankly, it's not hard for lots of stuff in the game to do lots of damage to them, especially the shieldless versions, so they will die a bunch, but they're hardy. It's just, if you bring 10 or 12 of them, the cost really does add up. On ultra-sized, you may not have anywhere to put them all. And in a siege, well, you'll probably win, but it's ugly, prolonged, and messy. I mean, yes, a lot of sieges are, but still. Saurus warriors are a foundational building block and a huge luxury against a lot of infantry and cavalry in the game, but far from all. Chaos warriors are too armored for them to kill efficiently and hit back too hard, both base and armor piercing, for them to have an advantage. Anti-infantry works on them, so basic greatswords have an edge, and so on and so forth. So I encourage you not to think about Saurus winning for you alone. Think beyond them to how you can use them as a stepping stone to kill faster and win better. Take advantage of their ability to tie down a lot of forces, and even middling lords and generals will get mauled over time fighting them, and work with them and around them to core out the enemy and get behind the squishiest elements. Saurus do not need a lot of babysitting. They'll break less than Skinks, and they'll take longer to break on average anyway. But if you lose the battle as a whole, this isn't helping you. So, win. Saurus can trade against a lot of stuff, particularly if you have a few basic techs and at least one pip in the red line. And spears do have a place because they chew up trolls and chariots a lot better, even if normal cavalry tend to drown against even basic warriors. You'll face a lot of monsters and chariots in this game. A balance is probably good and lets you close off the flanks of your formations better. Finally, if it comes down to a brawl, your lords and heroes just plain benefit from having Saurus around, to say nothing of your wealth of single-entity monsters. Yes, they're ultimately more vulnerable to magic, and it's harder to cheese healing with infantry in the mix, because you can't bring back dead models unless it's a Bastillodon with a revivification crystal. But for normal purposes your dinos can't be ganged up on if Saurus are keeping the enemy honest. And keeping enemy anti-large infantry honest is a key role Saurus warriors can do, at least as well as a lot of stuff out there. Just remember, they can really use ways to raise melee attack or lower enemy melee defense in a pinch. High weapon strength is wasted if they do not hit. Take care and have fun grinding the enemy to dust against Saurus Sandpaper. That's what it feels like for the other guy too, and it's better to be the Sandpaperer than the Paper-E.